Hey everybody, how you doing? This is Thursday, which means, like always, it's time for the Hammer Nayls Show. I'm Jack Hammer of the Santa Rosa Press Democrat, and as always, with me, my co-host, Mr. Jessie Naylor. How you doing, Jessie?
I'm doing good. It couldn't be better. My kids' last day of school is tomorrow, believe it or not,
Ooh.
and they are excited. So that's why we're a little bit late. You can blame it on me. Trying to get them to bed on the last night is never an easy thing to do. So here we are.
That's
Appreciate you
nice.
having me on, as always, Jack, and love doing the show with you, man.
Hey, you can't beat that. They don't. It's not even June and they're out of school. That's good. When we were kids, that was always like the second week of June. It wasn't even, and we're not even in the June yet, and your kids are getting out. That's awesome.
They start, I noticed the West Coast is different. I don't know how it is in California, but I remember growing up in Oregon, we didn't start until what is it? What's I always get my holidays mixed up. The one in September, early
Yeah.
September.
Well, yeah. When we were kids, we didn't start until after Labor Day, right?
Yeah, exactly. So we started after Labor Day. That was like the first day of school, or it was a short week, and then you went into the full week. But yeah, they start super early here. It's like middle of August, so they're out super early as well.
Yeah, well, that's how it's gotten here too. Out in California, it's middle of August usually, but it usually goes into the first week of July. So next week is our last week.
Gotcha.
But yeah, everybody starts earlier now. And part of it out here is because they also take a week off during. Remember, like when we were in school, between you had the two presidents' weekends, right? You had
Yep.
but now it's all one week, and so that week has been pushed back to the earlier start time, and they just keep adding days off for the kids, and so that means they start earlier. So
Yeah, that
uh,
makes sense.
anyway, we've done our school schedules. We've got some folks in the in the comments. We got Bryant who says, "What's up, Jack and Jesse? How's it going?"
What up, man?
We have Caesar, who's a new name. I haven't seen this one before. Good to have you on board. He says, "What's
Yeah,
up,
what up?
fellas?" And let's see what else we got. Jeremiah in here as well. A couple of some new faces and new names. That's awesome. Says,
Yeah,
"What's
for
up?"
sure.
So what's up is it's been an interesting week around the 49ers, right? We had OTA start on Monday.
Yeah.
Tuesday was the only day that the media was allowed at the facility for practice. Yesterday was media was on hand to interview assistant coaches, but then today they finished off with day 3 of their practices. No media availability, and I found out the hard way today that even just telling people that that there's no media availability gets people all riled up.
Yeah, there's no media availability today, Jack. I don't know if you knew this, being a part of the media or anything, but there was you didn't show up, right? And it was an empty parking lot and just you waiting there, ready to do your video vlog. No, that didn't happen.
No, I would have looked like Will Smith from that the GIF where he's just standing there in the middle of the room swiping his foot back and forth, wondering where everybody is. That's what it would have looked like for today. But
Yeah.
it's a Tuesday was a good day. It was fun to be up there and actually get a chance to watch guys run around the field, kind of like last week or 2 weeks ago when they did the rookie mini camp. That was nice too to be able to come back and talk about it. So I know we want to get into that a little bit, and there's been some other news that's been going on. I don't know if you heard about it, but there's been a little bit of talk about some other things that have been happening around the 49ers. So
Escaped me, no idea. I'm really not quite sure what you're talking about, actually. So I mean, I'll just get into the training camp stuff because I mean the other stuff is over my head. I'm not sure what's going on. I've been my head's been in the dirt a little bit. I'll just say that.
Well, I think before we get into the OTA piece, I think one of the fun things that would be fun to talk about though is, there was some clarity I think given from Kyle Shanahan during the press conference after practice on Tuesday, specifically around Jimmy Garoppolo and Deebo Samuel.
Yeah, absolutely there was. And it's funny, right? Because there was clarity, but it's kind of what we had already heard a few months ago. Now people are listening, right? They've heard it a second time and they're like, oh, okay, I get it, right? Like, yeah, Deebo's going to be a part of this team long term. That's the plan. And Jimmy Garoppolo, we're still planning on trying to trade him once he is healthy. Trey Lance is going to be the guy. And we talked about this after the owners what was it, the league meetings, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And we thought it was pretty clear based off of what Shanahan had said at that point that Trey Lance was going to be the starter. Like we read maybe between the lines, read actually what was said, I don't know, but we came away with that pretty confident that Trey Lance is going to be the guy. I think that there's a lot of confusion around it just because Jimmy's still on the team. I understand that. You got big media members talking about it and trying to spin it as if the reason he's here is because Trey Lance isn't ready or whatever that looks like. But the reality of the situation is that Jimmy Garoppolo is injured. And that is money that they have to eat by keeping him, or excuse me, if they were to get rid of him prior to him being able to pass a physical. And it's really hard to trade a player that's not healthy. So those things are reality. And I'm glad that Shanahan was asked the question, quite frankly, about that situation. And I think his answer was pretty obvious. I don't remember the exact wording, but he made it clear that Jimmy Garoppolo, he plans on Jimmy Garoppolo not being a part of this team, but anything can still happen. Is that kind of what you got from that?
Yeah, I mean, when you hear it and kind of read it back, it sounds like there's some waffling that's going on, but it's pretty clear they want to move on from him,
Yeah.
and they just need him to be healthy in order to do it. It's they don't know for sure they're going to be able to trade him because you always have to have somebody that's willing to make the trade with you to do that, right?
For
But
sure.
they've had, I think they've had talks. I feel like there's a team or two that they have something in place with, right? And it's gonna. I think it'll happen. I think there's going to be movement around the time of the of training camp. Because that's when I say the time of training camp, we're looking at July 1. Training camp comes in the end of July, so that's when he can throw. And everybody has. You're not going to trade for a quarterback that can't throw the ball. At least I don't, unless it's Peyton Manning, right?
Yeah.
I don't think you're going to make that kind of a trade or do anything in those of that sort. So I see. I heard Shanahan's information as just more validation of what we've been talking about already, and the national media people just need to kind of get on board with it because I think some of it they just need to talk.
Yeah, I think so as well. And I think that we've talked about it, that they understand that 49er fans they take the bait. Like, quite frankly, we run with it and that's okay. It's not a bad thing. I'm not trying to say that. It's an engaging fan base. That engaging fan base is why we have this show, right? It's why we are willing to put in on top of a full-time job, on top of our families, willing to put in the time because this fan base does engage so well, right? Whether they agree, disagree, support, or hate watch, this is an engaging fan base. And so that's something that I love being a part of. But at the same time, it gets taken advantage of a little bit when you've got national media guys that understand that. They know that they're going to get that engagement. I don't know. Actually, Jack, the last time that we talked, because we had a week off last week, right?
No, we were together, but I did want to bring up something really quick because I saw it. I missed it yesterday because I didn't see your tweet yesterday, but I saw it this morning. Apparently, you tweeted at Chris Sims.
I did,
and they picked it up and they used it on their show, and that was a good tweet from you. I know that's something that we had talked about. You and I had a very frustrating conversation, not like frustrating with each other, but just being frustrated with the whole process and not agreeing with what Chris Sims had said and kind of saying that he was full of baloney. And you basically put that all in front of them, and it was kind of cool to see them respond. I'll let you talk about that a little bit.
Yeah. That's exactly where I was going. So way to pick up on that. But I couldn't remember if that was last week, the week before. I feel like our schedule's kind of been all over the place, to be honest with you. The Warriors games have messed with it a little bit too. But yeah, so for me, that was cool. And I actually my whole thing with Chris Sims when we talked about it was not that he has a difference of opinion, because difference of opinion is totally fine. But I felt like he kind of flat out lied in that situation. Whether it was intentional or not, it was not the truth, what he had said. And so I called him on it. I said, you said that every single game that Trey Lance played in, that Shanahan had to make a conservative effort to get Trey Lance to 50% completion. And I thought that was not the truth at all. And you look at that game with the Texans, he was 16 of 23 passing. The first half, he was actually more accurate than he was the second half from a completion percentage standpoint, although he looked better in the second half. I think we can agree on that. But that was not the situation. And he only started 2 games. So 50% of the games, he was nowhere near 50% completion. So I said that to him, let him know that it wasn't all Shanahan gimmies either, because he was pushing the ball down the field. And his co-host read that to him, and he took a step back and said, hey, maybe I was wrong about that one. Maybe I had the Seattle game lumped in there. I watched every throw, and maybe I was off, and I respect that. Now, he still had his opinion about Trey Lance. That's fine, but just be truthful in that opinion. You don't have to over embellish to get your point across. It either is or it isn't, right? And so I respected Chris Sims for reacting the way that he did to that tweet that I had sent to him.
Yeah, and that's exactly it. I don't mind people having a differing opinion as long as it's not backed up with false information or things like that. Because there's some stuff that that part from Sims is what you just said. You explained it perfectly. That's what I didn't like was the under 50%. Oh, they were helping them get to the number. No, that wasn't really the case. We've heard some other things from various people that aren't even national media people that we don't need to keep rehashing because it's not worth our time. It's just, here's the other piece with Trey Lance before we get off, because we're going to talk about Trey Lance here in OTAs and we can kind of transition to that a little bit. But the other thing was there was a tweet today. I don't know if you saw it. Actually, you did, because I knew you liked my tweet, because you always like my tweets because they're always so good. But there was a tweet from Warren Sharp Football, where he put out 20 plus air yard catches last year. So the number of them. Mm-hmm. And the 49ers are way down the list at number 17. At only having 17. There's only 4 teams in the NFL that had fewer: New York Giants, the Tennessee Titans, Carolina Panthers, and Detroit. It's funny there in that Tennessee has a quarterback very similar to the one that the 49ers are looking to move off of. So I took that along with some information I saw from PFF. If you take that and you take their pass attempts, for example, Jimmy Garoppolo had only 11 of those on 441 pass attempts. That's only like 2.9% of his attempts went for that. Whereas Trey Lance, he had 5 on 71. If you take Lance's average and you put that with 512, which is how many passes the quarterbacks for the 49ers had last year, he would have thrown, if the averages worked out and stayed that way throughout the entire season, he would have had 36 of those, which would have jumped the 49ers all the way up to third, tied for third with Dallas, or Tampa Bay and Arizona at 1. Dallas and the 49ers would have been tied at 36. That's pretty impressive, and I think that's one of the biggest things that we're going to be seeing, and the biggest changes we'll see with the 49ers going into 2022.
Yeah, that's a big difference, and you're right. It's not perfect. And I did the same thing with Trey Lance's numbers over 2.5 games and broke it up over 17 and came to a conclusion. I know it's not perfect math. It's certainly fuzzy, but that number actually could have even been higher, because that, you got to think about it. That's a Trey Lance that really was not necessarily comfortable, right? He talked a lot about his finger on Tuesday, I think it was. Talked a lot about his finger still being injured, not being able to throw the ball the way that he would prefer to do so. Plus, we know that he was a rookie, right? So a Trey Lance that's not even that comfortable in the offense or being a pro football player or even healthy was still able to put up that type of number. It's extremely impressive, and it gets me excited because I think there's this assumption that Shanahan's offense is meant to be a dink and dunk offense. You hear West Coast, Shanahan comes from that cloth. You see what he had to do with Jimmy Garoppolo, and people forget that when Julio Jones was out there and Matt Ryan was out there, they pushed the ball down the field. He's not afraid to do that. He just has to have the people in place to make sure that actually happens. So I'm excited for it this year. If you don't mind, can you I can't see it anymore. The comment disappeared. I do want to address this one. JT Don. Yeah,
okay, but before we get that, one other thing that you're talking about, how wanting to push down, it's all built into their system already, right? It's built into their system to push the ball down the field. You just got to get the quarterback, just needs to be willing to do that, right?
Yes.
And so that's where I think we're going to see that with Trey Lance. You're going to see, that's why I keep saying, and I just sound like a broken record, but just run your offense and let the quarterback hit the guys down the field and who's willing to take the shots down the field. Because I put that tweet out this morning, and somebody responded back. It's like, Garoppolo looks short to deep, whereas Lance looks deep to short. And I think there's something to that. And we've seen it play out a little bit in the way that they've played.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and you're right. I mean, it showed up all over film as far as guys drawing wide open. I know I went and looked specifically at Brandon Ayuk and the NFC Championship game, and he was open a lot downfield. The shot plays were certainly there, to say the least.
Well, yeah. I mean, you look at that. You had Ayuk. You had Ayuk a couple of times, and that's not even the one that he missed, the George Kittle running right down the seam. I mean, there was a lot of them. That game shouldn't have been as close as it was, but
That stat though, I want to get clarification on that stat just for me. That it specifically is passes caught, right? So if a receiver dropped the ball, that would take away from that number. It's not necessarily a full quarterback stat, or is that removed? I don't know how that stat works. So
all it was what it was saying was that's how many times the receiver caught the ball 20 plus yards downfield. So it doesn't have in there the number of attempts at that distance, because if you look at the number of attempts at that distance, the numbers change all around.
For sure.
But that's just the number of completions.
But I think that's probably a fair way of looking at it. The only thing that would dilute that a little bit is if a receiver drops the ball, right? Like the quarterback pushed it down the field.
Sure.
Maybe that's going to happen to everybody. I think that's fair for everybody. I just wanted to fully understand the stat,
Yeah. And I went back and looked because I did see those numbers too. And I looked at the difference, between the two, and it was like 2.5, it was like, was it almost 3%, it was like 2.9, whatever, which would be like 294% more often with Trey Lance on the completion, I think it was on the completion part. Whereas then when you went to the attempts at that distance, it was like 234%, right? Make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So it was like almost 3 times as much in terms of the completions, and then about 2 times as much with the attempts.
Yeah. So. Okay. No, that's good. I just wanted to fully understand it.
Yeah, and I think this is the comment you wanted to look at real quick. Okay.
Yeah. So JT the Don, says, Jesse, you've been the main one complaining about Jimmy being here and them not naming Trey the starter. Then you, out of all people, said that Trey is up next. I'm disappointed. You're better than that. First of all, I hate that you're disappointed. Like, that's the worst, right? When your parents are disappointed in you versus mad at you. Seriously, like, that's the worst. JT, man, you're making me feel bad. Let me clarify this. Okay, maybe I've misspoke, or maybe I can say this a little bit better. Yes, Jimmy should not be on this roster. I want to be clear about that, right? I don't like that he's here. I understand why he is here now. Once all those trades bypassed, all the options to trade him bypassed, I understand from this point, like once all those other guys were traded, to why he would be here now, because now really your only option to me is probably to cut this guy. And if you're going to do so to roll over money or have the most available, you do that once he is healthy. I think the 49ers have made a grave mistake for many, many years in keeping Jimmy Garoppolo when they had options to get rid of him, including last offseason. I felt like they should have taken the Patriots route. They should have named Trey Lance the starter. They should have gotten rid of the problem before it became a problem and gotten rid of Jimmy G and rolled that money over. That's always been my stance. I also did say that after those league meetings had started, that it was very clear that Shanahan was naming Trey Lance the starter. To me, it was clear that he was willing to pass the baton at that point. Both can be true. Yes, I know that Trey Lance is going to be the starter. Yes, Jimmy G should not be here. 100%. So I hope that clears it up. But don't be disappointed, man. Be angry.
I'm with you on that. The one other thing too, before we get into the practice part, I was really a couple of things still on the track here with Trey. There's a super chat that I'm going to get to a couple of them. But the one thing that I took away from it too, I was really it was good to see the way that he was at the podium with the media. Because I felt last year when I would watch him talk, he didn't seem, I don't know if he was because he wasn't comfortable or if it was because he was just trying to be perfect with what he was saying or what have you, but there was definitely a more relaxed Trey Lance. And I know we're not into the season yet, but we're only, week 1 of OTAs, but his demeanor at the podium was what you expect or want to have out of your starting quarterback, because he was loose and he was jovial and there was everything that, I think that's the Trey Lance that everybody has seen up until like he was drafted, like the guys like Coach McAvoy and stuff who work with him, see that young man compared to what we saw last year during them. And that was a really good thing to see. And one last point on that was, I thought it was interesting when they asked him the question about how he feels now compared to a year ago. And he was very open and honest about the fact that he was swimming, in his own words, swimming last year at this point. He just gotten drafted and he's just, I know that people definitely agree with me. You haven't agreed with me, whatever. I am so glad that he did not play last year any more than he did. I think it did him a service to put him through the process that they put him through last year.
Yeah, I think, I think it's still a fair assessment. And again, like there's no right or wrong about this, because I think we both believe that Trey is going to be a pretty good player. And I think we both believe that regardless of how it had happened, that eventually that good player would have come out, right? Whether he had started all last year or he sat all of last year or did what they did. I would imagine at this point last year he would have been swimming. It was very, very new to him still. I still believe the right approach would have been to play him. He did talk about also, I don't know if he talked about it yesterday or Tuesday, but he said in the past that the most growth he made was in the weeks that he played. That was when he learned the most. And so, but again, there's no way to prove it. And you're certainly not wrong for thinking it. I think that there's certainly an argument for both sides of things for sure.
And I'm not going to disagree with him. I think he's right. I can understand where the weeks that he learned the most were the weeks that he had to go through it as a starter, and get on the field and play. And I get it. I just feel
job training.
Yeah, and everybody has to do that at some point, whatever job you're doing. But with him in particular, I just feel like he's been, for me, when I look back, he went through everything. I think he even kind of mentioned this on Tuesday a little bit, but he went through everything that a quarterback can go through in a season. He went from, a rookie through training camp all the way to an NFC championship game. The only thing he didn't experience was what the process is like to get ready for a Super Bowl. At the end of the season, they even had him talking to the media. I think some of that was gamesmanship as far as who's going to start and all that kind of stuff, but that was good practice for him. So when he could, when he stepped up there Tuesday, he's used to talking about it. And it was just good to see. I'm looking forward to watching him play this year. I'm really excited about being able to cover him. And we'll get into his performance from Tuesday in a minute.
Yeah, absolutely. And Trey is, he really is everything that we thought he was, right? Everything that we were told that he was. You see it. The players are talking about it. The guy is so much more than a big, strong athlete with a good arm and mobile, right? He's so much more than those physical attributes. He does have that mental capacity to be great at this. He has that want to be great at this. And I'm just excited. I'm so excited to see this kid grow, and so excited to see Shanahan work him in and work to his strengths and grow with him. And this whole era that's about to be upon us is one to be excited about. It really, really is.
Yeah, for sure. It definitely is. The last thing, and then we'll get into the super chats. The other thing, the last thing that I'll say from like the Kyle Shanahan portion of the press conference after practice, and this was news to everybody, really, was that he expects Deebo Samuel to be there for mandatory minicamp. I think that's news to everybody. Should have been, because it was news to me, because I feel like he was going to be with the team this year, but for Shanahan to see that he expects him to be there for mandatory minicamp, that was something that we hadn't heard.
Yeah, that's true. And I guess I did gloss over that in the beginning as we were kind of going over everything that was talked about. Yeah, that was news. But I'm curious, was that because you've talked to him? Is that because you feel like you're close to a deal? Is that because if he doesn't show up, he loses that accrued year, and you expect that you guys have the upper hand? Why do you expect it, right? We don't know why he expects it, but the fact that he expects it certainly is news. Absolutely. There is, take it for what it is, but rumor that he was flying into San Jose or San Francisco, whatever, today, and maybe that means that they're trying to work out a deal. I don't know. We'll see.
We'll find out. We'll find out. So no, that was cool, and it was good to hear that. We'll see if it actually comes to fruition. And I guess when I say it's good to hear it, it was good just to be able to report it and be like, hey, this is going on, and we'll see what happens. But because it's fun when you hear something that you haven't heard, right? Everybody's heard. We've been hearing the same stories for 3 months. It's kind of nice to hear something different for a change. All right, so we got to get into this real quick, okay? Because it was asked, so we'll put it out there and. But it was Dabada.
Oh, I thought he asked a couple things. I didn't see that. I honestly didn't see that one. He asked about pink eye as well, which is pretty funny comment. We'll talk about that.
We'll get to that one too. But it would be better if it was instead of Dabada, it would be better if it was Dabadoo. Dabadoo. But anyway, appreciate the super chat. And he asks, do you guys feel that Grant crosses the line? And I know what this is about, and you know what it's about too. I'm going to say real quick, I've been very quiet on this subject because it's not my argument to have, and I don't think people really want to hear what I have to say because they don't. Because anyway, I was there. I was not standing right next to Grant, but I was close enough to pick up the hat and hand it back to him. Grant's recollection or what he has said about what happened on the field is 100% correct. In terms of the hat flip portion of it, the other piece, I did not hear the rap song from Javon Kinlaw. I was not over at that part of the field at that point. I didn't hear that. And I'm just going to say this. I think I said it on I said it on the camp show that I did afterwards because it was asked of me, I believe. If I didn't, I'll say it here is, you can't do what Javon Kinlaw did. You can be angry and you can come up and you can talk to him and whatever. You can't do the hat flip part. You can come up and be angry and tell him to F off or whatever you want to do, but you can't do the hat flip part. Does Grant cross the line? I've thought about this a lot over the last couple of days. I don't agree with everything that Grant says and does, and he doesn't agree with everything that I say and do, which is part of how we make the world work, right? I respect what Grant. I have the utmost respect for him. I think that he's taking everything that's going on pretty seriously, even though I haven't really talked to him about it. I just from what I've seen, and I know you've talked to him, Jessie, a little bit more than I have. And as far as crossing the line, I don't think he. I don't know. I don't think he crossed the line with Javon Kinlaw. Because I don't think he ever got personal with him. The closest thing that as I've thought about this, I think the thing for me that maybe, I know that for me, I can understand Javon Kinlaw being upset because you say negative things about people, they're going to get upset about it. That's just the way it works. I think that those things get bigger when somebody is injured. Because when players are injured, their livelihood is at stake. And I don't know a whole lot about Javon Kinlaw. Don't know him personally or any of those kind of things. I know what I've read about his upbringing. And so I don't want to really speak a whole lot of things that are can be misconstrued. But I'll say that, this is a guy who he's grown up having to fight for everything that he's gotten. And when you're for somebody, a player like for him having the injury that he had, it's different than a player like Nick Bosa, who's it's hard for him as well. But I would think that a guy like Javon Kinlaw might see the dire straits that come along with maybe losing your career more than some other people would. And so maybe that's part of it plays into it too. Injuries are a terrible thing for players. That's one of the reasons I don't make light of them. I will report them. I'll talk about them, and I'll say, well, I guess I shouldn't say don't make light of them because I do it to a certain extent when I'm talking about Jaquaski Tart, right? I've called him Jimmy Garoppolo so many times. But I've never made it to where like a guy, I tried to not make it like somebody doesn't want to play or they don't take their job seriously and those kind of things. And I don't think that Grant has either. So does he cross the line? I think he goes right up to it. And I can understand why some people might think that he does. And Some people might not. It's a tough one to get into.
Yeah, for sure. And you know, I respect the way that everybody handles things. Everybody handles it a little bit differently. You know, for me, I certainly have not shied away from the conversation on Twitter and where I stand on it. But I do want to clarify, and I talked about this a little bit last night on my show. One thing that I've tried not to do, I certainly have tried not to profit from this thing. You know, I don't make money on Twitter. And on my YouTube channel, I've had one live this week. I did not use any headline for, you know, a Kinlaw picture or anything like that because I don't like what happened. You know, regardless of who's at fault, let me be clear about that. What happened was it was like a train wreck. And it's something that I saw it live. I've talked to Grant many times since then, including doing a show with him. And I don't like what I saw. I don't, right? So with that said, you know, I certainly, my initial stance, I was very, very strong that Kinlaw was the one that was in the wrong for sure. But I think I've also, hopefully I've made it clear that Kinlaw is entitled to his emotion, right? He really, truly is. As a human being, and I talk a lot about the human element when it comes to the 49ers and sports in general, I bring it into the conversation quite a bit from different angles. And so I have to bring it in here. Javon Kinlaw is a human being, and he deserves to have that frustration, that emotion. And Grant himself even said that, hey, if he wanted to cuss me out, no problem, right? But where across the line was the hat thing, and then, you know, he felt like some of the things were a little out of bounds when it came to the show and what he said. But Grant has not been perfect in this either, right? And so I think that Grant does do a good job of staying right up to that line. And I don't want Grant to change that. And I don't think anybody else really wants Grant to change that because that's what separates Grant. That's what makes Grant different and special, right? That's what gets him and has gotten him to where he's at. But at the same time, he certainly has gone a little bit over the top, right? With the McFloppy and continuing to drive after a player. I think that's the continual push can be a lot, right? And I understand the frustration from a player standpoint. So I'll say this. I don't think anybody's 100% right. I certainly am biased in this. Like, I'm not going to pretend as if I am not, because Grant is a genuine friend of mine. I think a lot of people are piling on, and deservedly so. That's fine. I don't think Grant, I know Grant does not feel sorry for himself in this situation. I can say that with confidence, right?
Mm-hmm.
But as a friend, the last thing I'm going to do is pile on and turn my back on somebody when they are in a tough moment, right? That's when you need your friends the most. So like it, love it, hate it. I love interacting with 49er fans. I love the social media aspect and all those things. But I'm also a human. And I side with my friend unless something egregious has happened. And that's just where I'm at with it.
Yeah. And I hear you. And yeah, I feel like there were mistakes made on both sides. And everybody needs to get past it. I know it's something that I'm new at this. I've only been doing this for a short period of time. So I'm new at this game. I'm not, you know, and I have a different style than Grant, because that's just my personality. But
Right.
the, you know, the one thing that I will say, and it's just a different world, right? Because Grant's dad was Grant's talked about this, and Grant and his dad talked about it today. And, you know, I was talking about this Tuesday night after it happened with my girlfriend anyway, and just kind of discussing it. And here's the difference. And it's just part of this whole thing and the whole mess and the way that it got blown up is because of the world that we live in now. If this had happened back in 1980 with Grant's dad, when he was doing the beat, right? Like for example, today they were talking, and I read this in his book about the Lowell Cohn, about the time when he was saying that Dwayne Kuiper had an 80-year-old knee, and then he went into Dwayne Kuiper got pointed him out. He got pointed he got pointed out to Dwayne Kuiper, and Dwayne Kuiper walked over to him and said, how about we have this guy, all that, the whole story, right?
Yeah, for sure.
And the difference, though, is that in today's age, instead of having those face-to-face discussions and having those arguments face-to-face, you have guys who, and I'm not saying that Javon Kinlaw did this totally. There was just in general, let's get away from the Grant thing for a minute, I guess. Let's just talk about in general. When players get angry with people, where do they go? They go to Twitter, and they go to Instagram, and they go to all these other places. And so instead of it being dealt with in face-to-face, it gets blown up through these other mediums before people even can get together and have a conversation. And we see that there. We see that here too, between you and I. We get into arguments on Twitter about 49er stuff or whatever, right? But then when we talk, even if we don't agree, we talk, and it's not we're not ready to, fight with each other.
No, that's never been the case.
And I think it's just a different world now. And partly, the social media and all that kind of stuff, it's not probably sound like an old cadre here. I think the social media stuff has made it very tricky when it comes to the way that things are handled now, because it just gets out so fast.
Yeah, I agree with that. And it's a different era. I mean, obviously this thing has taken a life of its own, and here we are. So we purposely didn't make it a topic. We knew it would come up at some point, and we're not naive to that situation, but I think everybody's weighed in on it and replayed the video and put it on their own platforms. And, you've seen it a million times over. You've gotten everybody's opinion a million times over. I would have preferred not to talk about it at all, but I also respect that somebody was willing to pay to ask the question. And I think that it's fair that I answered that question. So.
Yep, absolutely. And then the other thing that I wanted to bring up really quick with this, and we're going to get back to football, I promise you, we'll get back to football in about 5 minutes, was there was a tweet from Jaquowski Tart where I don't know if you've all seen this. Jessie, do you have it in front of you?
Yeah, I can pull it up actually pretty quickly here.
Yeah, if you can just pull it. I know that you were looking at it before we went on, and and this one, I know that Jaquowski Tart's intent was about what happened on Tuesday and what the perception of the players. But this is it goes back to, I wanted when Jessie and I were talking about this, I wanted to take more of a bigger look at this, because it's not just a internal 49ers thing. Do you have it in front of you?
Yeah, and I wish I knew who he was replying to. I thought this was one of the ones that he had a back and forth with Stats, but there's an account here that he's specifically replying to, but very, very similar context, but this account is no longer in existence. So, all right. He says, crazy how players become the bad guys for standing up for themselves. Media, social media has a huge influence on players' narratives. So we were just talking about that a little bit. Allowing anyone to speak on your name with no accountability for what they say.
Yeah, and that's not even talking. I know that he's talking specifically about himself and maybe about some other things, or maybe he's talking about a specific reporter or what have you. I want to take this another way, and I want to say this to anybody that's watching this show or who does watch this show, who is a 49er fan, who last offseason, there was a quarterback that was up for the draft that you guys ripped continuously. And there were so many false narratives made about this because of the way that people were just speaking about him. And some of that was from media people. Some of it was just from Twitter in general. But the way that people talked about Mac Jones throughout the draft process last year and even after the draft process is partially what he's talking about here. I know he's talking about a lot of more than just that, but that's just an example that doesn't even involve a player that's now on your team. This is 49er fans going after a guy because they didn't want him to be on their team because they felt that somebody else was better. I mean, the whole Mac Jones thing was wild last year. There were a lot of things that were said about him that were accurate. There was also a lot of things that were said about him that were false, and a lot of people ran with the false ones. I was saying that the 49ers should draft Mac Jones. I was called racist because I wanted them to take Mac Jones. Because I felt that Mac Jones was going to be a good quarterback. Guess what? He was the best rookie in the class. And I know he went to a good situation. But, he was really good for New England. He made the playoffs. And I also liked Trey Lance the more I watched of him later on in the process. And it's just wild, man, the way that whole thing came up. And the narratives piece is right. And I asked you this, Jesse. Players are in a tough situation with this whole thing, and it's definitely something that I have been thinking about a lot in the last 2 days.
Yeah, I'll take it even beyond players. I think anybody that has a following, the bigger the following, the harder it is to even just be you, right? And I understand where, and this is again where the human element comes in. I understand being a player if you're choosing to be on social media. And this is, to Jimmy G's credit, this dude does not even mess with social media, or at least we don't know that he messes with it if he does, right? And I think that saves him a lot of heartache, certainly, because my gosh, right? Like he's been a topic of 49er land for quite some time. And I think that anybody who has a platform at all, the bigger that platform it is, the harder it is to go about things, because you get people, everybody has an opinion and everybody's tweeting at you, and you get DM. I don't know if you get them, maybe it's just me, but well, I know that you had to have, right? You said that you were called racist for wanting one quarterback over another, which is insane.
Yeah, they weren't in DMs. They were just in responses to the tweets,
Okay, but either way, like that, come on, that's so over the top. You don't know somebody, and that's a lot. That's a lot to handle. But I know that I get DMs that are pretty threatening, and it is what it is, right? Like but I say it is what it is, but it shouldn't be normal. That shouldn't be okay. Because of course, anytime you get those, it's a faceless bot who has 0 followers and just started Twitter. They got a burner account and they want to talk a little trash, right? And that's cool to a certain extent. Like, I don't mind the banter, but if you come into my DMs in the middle of the night and tell me that you want me to die, or I'm at whatever it is, right? It's a lot. So if I'm getting that at a small level, very, very small level, right? Like I'm not a dude that most people even knew a year ago. Okay.
You only got like 2,000 followers, Jesse.
I know, that's what I'm saying.
I don't know, whatever the number is,
but yes. it's not it's small peanuts. I'm not a big guy. So I can imagine if you're a blue check mark or you have a lot of followers, a lot of engagement, regardless of what the walk of life is, how much hate you get. And I can imagine how it can weigh on some people's mental health. I really can. And I think mental health is a very serious thing. And some people take what is being said to them extremely serious. Some people are able to laugh it off. Everybody's different, right? And so I get it from what Tart is saying. I empathize with it. I understand it. And quite frankly, I have to, in this moment, and I hope everybody else is doing this as well, but I personally am trying to reflect a little bit on maybe some of the things that I've said over social media, right? I don't think I've gone crazy overboard to where like I'd get doxxed or things would be pulled up about me or whatever, but I haven't been the nicest in the way that I've addressed one Jimmy Garoppolo, right? And I think that's something that I've reflected on a little bit, and I'm like, okay, I gotta be better, because if that was me and I had millions of people saying that about me, how would I feel about it, right? And so if I'm contributing to that in any negative manner, I gotta be better, right? And so I think out of this whole situation, one way or another, I hope that everybody, whether you're on Grant's side, you're on Kinlaw's side, you're on the player side, whatever that is. I hope that everybody reflects just a little bit and can be a little bit better from this situation and learn something from this situation and just be better because of it.
Yeah, I know you and I had that conversation this morning on back and forth in our messages about stuff. So definitely we all need to be better. But coming off of this, I think the really important question though here was from Dabada. He says, Jessie, did you have pink eye last night?
I didn't. I think this is in reference to a comment. I rubbed my eye, and my co-host goes, "Don't do that. You can catch pink eye." So it's pretty funny to that. Yesterday, listen, like I said, I've only done one stream, and yeah, I had a little bit of irritation in my eye for sure. The show started out. I was moved to tears talking about some of the real stuff that was happening in life that was not football related or 49ers related, and thinking about my own kids and all those things. And so, yeah, I definitely had a little eye irritation, and my co-host poked a little fun at that. It was pretty funny. So I appreciate you keeping it light after asking a very serious question.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh man, this guy, he's on fire. He tells me that I need to body Grant like Kinlaw did at the next practice. I might do that to him the next time I see him in the media center. Just walk up to him and
chest to chest.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's see. What else was there? There's a bunch of them in here, but we do need to get back to football. I don't know what your time is tonight, Jessie. We're running up on an hour, but I want to get into the mini camp or week one of OTAs were interesting, and I'm trying to get to them. There's like a lot of comments tonight. Let me see if I can find them. Boom. That was the Trey Lance one. There's a couple of them on Trey Lance, but I'm getting to it. I promise. I want to get to this one because he says, Michael Everett says, it's nice to have football to talk about. So after we just spent you sent this in and we spent 20 minutes talking about everything but football. So let's get back to football. And we're going to get to right from there. Let's get right back into Trey Lance because we talked about that earlier. Mr. G 49er00. Thank you for the donation. Thank you for the other donations as well, gentlemen. And Trey, I see a combo of Peyton Manning and Donovan McNabb, cerebral and pushing the ball downfield. Appreciate the good work you both put in. Thank you for that.
Yeah, and if Mr. G's who I think he is, he and I have some really good Twitter back and forth. Very respectful. We're on opposite ends of the spectrum when it came to that whole situation that's happened this week. But we very, very respectful to each other. And I think that, again, it's okay to have disagreement and those types of things. And so I just want to say thank you, Mr. G, for being respectful the way that you are. And hopefully I've come off the same to you. But yeah, I think that's actually really, wow. Okay. I think I'm trying to think of how that goes together. Well, Peyton Manning had a wobbly ball. Trey Lance certainly has that, right? Donovan McNabb. I've heard a lot of people make the Donovan McNabb comparison, but I think what you're saying is probably physically a lot like McNabb, but cerebrally, from a cerebral standpoint, Peyton Manning, right? A student of the game, eventually, hopefully gets to that point where he can get to the line and just pick you apart, know everything that's coming, knows what to expect, but also can have some of that physical capability that Peyton Manning maybe did not have. And I think that's hell, if he's any combination of those two, I think that's fantastic.
Well, I mean, if we're going to sit here and we're going to say that he's going to be, he has Peyton Manning and Donovan McNabb. I mean, one guy's in the Hall of Fame, right? Let's just go ahead and say that I'm just going to go ahead and say I hope that Trey becomes Joe Montana.
Seriously.
And the reason I say that, and I'm not totally being facetious, obviously I'm not going to put Joe Montana on him. That's not fair. But when you watch Joe Montana, if you go back and you watch those old films, Joe Montana wasn't, he wasn't the guy that just stood in the pocket and like Peyton Manning. He moved all over the place, and he had movement ability, and he had the ability to run and make plays with his feet. He wasn't Steve Young movement, but he was able to move really well, especially earlier on in his career before he hurt his back more and stuff like that. He was a really moving around all over the place. But I see in Trey Lance as a guy who has the ability to hit all areas of the field. He has the ability to move around if he needs to. And he doesn't want to move around, though. He wants to make the plays from the pocket. He doesn't take off running just to take off running. And my only argument against Trey Lance is, and it's not even against Trey Lance, it's the way that he's used. I don't want to see Trey Lance used like a running back. I don't want to see the read option stuff done with him all that much. I want to see him be able to drop back. And if he's going to scramble or he's going to run, that it comes off of a pass play that he ends up breaking down and he runs, because that's when he's going to be most successful, I believe.
Yeah, and I think that's very accurate, and that we've talked about that as well. But Trey Lance wants to be a quarterback first. He really does. And even last year, when things were a little hectic, I called it organized chaos. When things were a little bit hectic for him, even then, when he would approach the line, he kept his eyes downfield and tried to make a throw. He really is a quarterback. He certainly is athletic. Maybe a little less athletic than what people thought coming into the league. I think a lot of people thought he would just be the type of guy that could just break a pocket, get around the edge, and do his thing. That's not at all who he is, but he can move. And he's strong. You can shrug off tackles and all those things. But he's a lot like Russell Wilson or even a Mahomes, where yes, once he gets mobile, he's looking to throw the ball downfield. And with him, you have to watch all areas, because you see it with these big arm guys, the Herberts, the Mahomes, the Allens. Just because they roll out right doesn't mean that ball can't come back left 50 yards downfield. They got the arm strength to do it. And that really puts a lot of pressure on opposing defenses.
Yeah, and the whole running around kind of thing with Lance is something that I felt was really overblown in the run up to the draft. He does put pressure on the defense with his ability to run and all those kind of things. But the reason I said that I felt like it was overblown is because he was a Division I FBS type of athlete that could have played at a big time school if a team just hadn't screwed up and not made him an offer.
Right.
His talent and his physicality should have put him there, and schools did want him to go there, but they just don't want him to play quarterback. So that's why he ended up in North Dakota State. And he was playing against guys. When you watch him run over linebackers, I was like, yeah, he ran over a linebacker. That's cool. He's not going to do it in the NFL. So that was for me. I wasn't as enthused by that as the ability to get out of the pocket, to press the edge and force those defenders to have to come, or be able to force them to have to follow him as he moves to the left, like you said, and then throw it back to the move to the right, throw it back to the left deep, or move to the left and throw it to the right deep. All those kind of things. His ability to move and still get the ball down the field. We saw that last year with the 49ers with him a little bit, and we talked about it. And the other question here from Lorenzo, he says, thank you for the donation. Lorenzo, he says, so many different stories. How is Trey's throwing motion? And I would say that it's different. It's quicker. It's tighter. He's not. He definitely, the windup is not there, and that goes to one of the drill. And some people have said that it's a little bit lower. I don't know. I don't really remember him being an over the top guy. I always kind of remember him being right about at his ear hole, just a little bit above. I don't think he's any lower with his release point. I just think that it's not coming back here so much. It's more here. It's not like this wind up like he used to do. I think that's the difference. He's more in here, and that's. The motion I'm doing right now, I look like Coach McAvoy when he was on the show with us. I think that's what we see. But that leads me to something about the OTAs that I wanted to say, is that they have the change of quarterback coaches, and didn't see this during the one day that we were there for the rookie mini camp, but we saw it here, and it was kind of cool to see. We'll see if it's something that they do. It's the way that they work with them all the time. But instead of having them go back and forth and side to side like they used to do with Rich Scangarello, instead they had the bags down, which we've seen from with Coach Shanahan in the past. And when you see him working with the quarterbacks at the what was it? What's the place that he's involved with? I don't know. Quarterback Collective.
Yeah, there you go.
Right, and where they're moving back and forth, and that's about keeping a nice wide base. That's what having the bags there is for. But the other thing so that's fine. They're moving back and forth. I get the reason they're doing that. But what I liked was that they actually had these screens that were put up. They had two of them, one on the left, one on the right. Screens were probably about 6.5 feet tall. They're higher than the quarterbacks. I know that for sure. And they were between the quarterbacks. They're about 3-4 yards past the line of scrimmage, and they were between the quarterbacks and their targets. And I really like that, because the reason that's there, and I think at least the reason I think that it's there, couldn't see it from behind. I was looking at it from the sidelines, but I think that's there to force them to have to get the ball up and over. Think of it as your defensive linemen have the hands up in the air. They're probably going to be about 6 to 7 feet high, unless they, even a 6'5" guy when he jumps, he's probably, a little bit around that range. what have you. But it's working on getting the ball up and over. And so, that was something that I remember talking about last year with Grant. Was like, because growing up and playing quarterback, we had to throw the ball over the goalpost repeatedly for that kind of a thing. We didn't have these fancy screens that we could put up. But it was a good drill. I liked the way that worked out. Trey Lance did really good at it. The only guy that hit the screen was Brock Purdy that I remember.
You chill out right now. Don't. No Brock Purdy slander.
Hey, well, and I do have to say this. I after practice, I put out a tweet about how there was only one quarterback at practice who threw an interception. Well, there's somebody getting all crazy in my comment section over here. There was put him on timeout. There was Brock Purdy threw the interception. I put out a tweet about Brock Purdy being the only quarterback to throw an interception, and he had to practice with it. God, I kind of, that wasn't fair of me. It's true that that's the case, but that was more directed at the people who've been saying that Brock Purdy should be starting over Trey Lance. And it wasn't a good throw by him. It was at that point, they were in kind of a team period, and bodies around him. He stepped up in the pocket. He looked to his left, came back to the middle, threw it, got tipped up, and Quantrez Knight came away with a pick. So that's that.
Yeah, I think that's a cool little drill, or a unique addition to that drill, and probably one that is better. It's interesting because I've said I don't see a lot of change in Trey Lance's throwing motion. And I also said I want to go back and compare. I see change from how he played when he was playing his throwing motion to what we're seeing on film during this one-day OTA that we've had. But I also saw change last year when he played versus what we saw in OTAs last year. So I've got to decipher how different it is from OTAs last year, because again, until you have people bearing down on you and it's live bullets, how much has that throwing motion really changed, and how much did they really want it to change? Right. So yes, certainly I do see some change in that throwing motion compared to when he played. I'm curious to see how different it actually is from what we saw during basic throwing drills this time last year. And that I don't have an answer to. And so I don't want to comment on it and say it's way different, or I just don't know. And I haven't gone back to review that yet. So
yeah. And I don't think it's way different. I think that's the thing, is I don't think it's way different. I think it's very similar. It's just, what have you. It's been adjusted a little bit, but it's not like a major shift, and it's worked out for him pretty well. I just kind of looking through here. 49ers throwback. Thank you very much. Donation says, hey, Jack and Jessie, Trey Lance is better than Jimmy. I don't know. How can you come on here and say that? Seriously. That, especially with Jessie here, because that Jessie is the biggest Jimmy Garoppolo fan of all 49ers. You can't come on here and do that. That's
I'll say this.
I think is this Fernando, or I don't know his name. Anyway, I know who you are because you're in my Twitter, I think, if it's the same guy.
I will say this. He's better than Jimmy, but he's not better than Brock Purdy. I mean, it's Brock Purdy season. I think, isn't that funny, seriously, that people genuinely think that Brock Purdy is here and he's going to be the starting quarterback? What are we saying? How wild is that to even be a thought? That is crazy to me. And people believe that. They really believe that. That's insane.
Yeah, no, it is. It is quite interesting. We have Jay Guayo says, we just have to show respect and compassion to each other, like his respectful attitude towards media.
Yeah.
I'm having a hard time reading that. It just but looks more confident. Oh, I think he's talking about.
It's two different things put together. Okay.
Yeah, he's talking about how we all need to show. This is Jay Guile. Thank you very much, Jay. And he's saying that we have to show respect and passion for each other. Boom, I get that. And you like how Trey Lance respectfully as possible, told everybody to. He doesn't care what you say because he's going to go out and pretty much. He's going to go out and do his thing, and he's going to play, and he doesn't care if you're gassing him up as Jimmy Ward said, or trying to tear him down like some of the other people do.
Yeah, I didn't make a comment on this when we were talking about it, but I do want to say that I felt like Trey Lance looked more confident in two areas. One, at the podium, and I think he's always had that leadership tendency. One thing I really liked about him and preferred about him over one Jimmy Garoppolo is that he really, after his games, he would take a lot of personal accountability as to why things wouldn't go right, at least in front of the media. And so I like that about him. But even just, I feel like he almost had like a little bit of a shaky voice. Like he wasn't fully confident in being in front of the NFL media. This year he's standing tall. He projects a lot better. He's talking more outward. He's just a lot more confident, I think, in his position with this team and knowing exactly what it is and going through this now for a season. And it was a small clip, but as the team was coming out and he's just kind of warming up and throwing, two things that I noted was, one, he had flipped the ball to Brandon Ayuk. And that to me just tells me, hey, listen, like, we're boys. We're on the same page. We know what we're here to do, right? I liked that. And then he would routinely stop his throwing to dap up all of his teammates. And I think that's those little things that sometimes go unnoticed. Those are again, I've talked about leadership, and I when talking about leadership, I'm more referring to Shanahan, and I talk about how it's reverse poker. And as a leader, you've got to deposit in that piggy bank of who you're trying to lead, because at some point you're going to need them to go all in. That's what Trey Lance is doing there. It may seem small, but just making your presence known, giving your teammates love as they come onto the field, letting them know that you appreciate them in that little way, you appreciate that you're teammates. Those little things do go a long way, and when you're depositing in that leadership bank. And so I recognize it. I saw it right away, and I wanted to make note of it because I didn't bring it up earlier.
Yeah, no, for sure. And then outside of, thank you very much, Jay, for the super chat and watching. Like it's awesome to have you in here, like always. Some of the other things that people are asking about, one of them is the slot cornerback position. They're asking who we feel should be in there, and I took note of it on Tuesday at practice. It started off with Darqueze Dennard. He was the first man up. And that's what Fred Warner had said way back when all the OTAs things first started, back before the draft, right after the draft, when it was, when we first talked to him way back. He was talking about how Darqueze Dennard was they just started on the field, but Dennard was the guy that was running with the ones, and he's the first guy up. It was Dennard, and then they went to Samuel Womack played in there a little bit. Diamador Lenore played in there a little bit, but it went from Dennard to Quantrez Knight to Samuel Womack to Diamador Lenore. And I don't really I don't think we should make a big deal about the way that the depth chart rolls out, because, hey, like I said on Twitter this morning, Elijah Mitchell was running with the threes all the way up until the first game of the season.
Yeah. That's a very good point. What I do like to see, though, is that you mentioned Womack, and we've had conversations about Womack, and I think the consensus among 49ers fans and content creators is that Womack really would be great for that nickel corner position, right? And so that's a thought that we've come up with, but I wasn't sure if the 49ers also believed in that, right? And so seeing it and actually having it happen on field says that the team, at least to a certain extent, agrees that he could possibly play nickel, which I think is great. So because they really, those outside corners are set, right? Assuming that Mosley's the other starter, they're set. If Mosley's going to play nickel for any reason, then that would change things up drastically. But we pretty much know who the outside guys are going to be. Who's that nickel corner going to be? And Womack's a guy that I know that you like. It's a guy that I like. And he does fit that profile physically. And I'm glad that the 49ers also possibly see him in the mix there at nickel corner, because there is going to be a lot of competition there, but I think that there's some good options there as well.
Yeah, there definitely is. And I think that Womack can play inside. He can do the coverage inside. I'm not sure if he's physical enough to play inside with the run defense, but he has the ability to do it from a coverage standpoint. I found it interesting that they had Travaris Ward on the right side, and then on the left side is where Womack was playing.
Womack
was playing, and Mosley as well. I've just found that interesting. There's all kinds of reasons you can do it, but they also did this, with Castro Fields. He had been on the right side during the day that we saw him at rookie minicamp. He was over on the left side a little bit as well. I mean, they're moving guys all over the place. This is their time to play around. I think that's part of why you saw Jeff Wilson Jr. and Jermichael Hasty as your top two backs. I think they're just getting these guys out there to get them reps. I don't think it necessarily means that those are going to be your ones and twos, but obviously it's not. But I don't know if they're even that high on the depth chart when camp breaks in August, right? And I know we're running up against the time here. The other thing that I'll say is real quick, I want to get to the super chat before we have to end up. Blind Tom, he says, sanity here in Ninerville. Who is the O-line first week of the season? Thanks, guys. All right. So, there was no Trent Williams. There was no Daniel Brunskill, no Alex Mack. Mike McGlinchey was on hand, but he was more of a coach on Tuesday. Gav, I know you've been waiting patiently, trying not to fall asleep for the answer. Kyle Juszczyk was not at practice on Tuesday. So he was not there. I don't know if he was there today because the media wasn't allowed in today. The only day that was available to the media was on Tuesday as far as the practice portion. Who is the offensive line the first week of the season? Trent Williams is going to be your left tackle. Mike McGlinchey is going to be your right tackle. Your right guard is going to be Daniel Brunskill. Your left guard is going to be Aaron Banks, and your center is going to be either Alex Mack or Jake Brendel.
That's fair. That's totally fair. I like that you said either or. That's why I was kind of like, ooh, I don't know, because I don't know about Mack. I don't think anybody knows for sure. I think it's safe. Okay, I won't speak for you. For me, I'm leaning towards him coming back. Right. Mm-hmm. Yes. I think some of the things we've seen on social media and whatnot, and kind of just the way they're talking. And I also am in the belief that if he was for sure retiring, that we would know that by now. But I think that he might be a little bit on the fence and probably leaning more towards coming back. So I don't know. We'll see what happens there. I hope he comes back. I really genuinely do. If he does, I think that a lot of people's question marks about this offensive line will drop quite a bit. Like, that's a pretty drastic drop. Once you've got that taken care of, it's like, okay, well, the left guard is different. We can handle that. We're good.
Yeah, and I know that you were saying that you think that he's going to come back, and I do too. I've said that in the past. I did see something on Pro Football Talk today. I don't know if you saw this or not. And this is something that's might be, telling us that we're both wrong. But they were saying that if he was to retire, he would actually owe the 49ers a portion of his signing bonus. Mm. So maybe the reason that it's not been done is because I don't know this for a fact, but maybe there is some discussion going on between the player and the team, whether or not he's going to have to give that money back. Maybe that's what the holdup is here. Who knows? I kind of think that it has to do with, I'm with you. I mean, it makes sense. And I've heard other people say this as well. It makes sense to think that he's going to be coming back because at this point, there's nothing to lose or gain by with the way that whether he comes back or not. It's not like it's going to affect the draft or any of those kind of things.
Yeah. And I would hope that, they obviously have a contingency plan in place, and maybe there's some language in that contract that if he does it after a certain time, he doesn't have to pay it back. I don't know. I don't know the details. So that's interesting. That's an interesting point. So I hope that's not the case. I really don't.
Yeah. And I don't, here's the thing. I get into Jake Brendel with you another time. If you look at Jake Brendel's numbers from his pro day, he is better. He's not as fast as everybody loves Jason Poe for his athleticism.
Yes.
Because he ran a real fast in a straight line. Jake Brendel's shuttle and all the things that measure your lateral movement. Yeah. He's faster than him.
Interesting.
All of his lateral movements numbers from his pro day are better than Jason Poe's. So
interesting. Okay.
We'll put that out there.
Yeah.
But that's it. Real quick I gotta let you go. There was somebody over in the comment section. They were asking if I like the dulcet tones of Peter Cetera, and I'll just say this for everybody that's out there: I am a man who will fight for your honor. I'll be the hero that you're dreaming of. No,
it always goes haywire at some point. Oh, you got that. Hey, you got that chat, that sketchy chat person back.
For the glory of love. Oh, see, just at
Let's see if he can sing. Let's see if he can sing and also block that person.
That was the perfect timing. I started singing about love, and then that guy popped back into the. I don't love my bots, but I am. Hey, if you like my singing, start throwing out some Queen songs because I'm right there with Freddie Mercury. Anyway,
album dropping soon.
Yes. Yes. Because just keep yourself alive. We'll just say that, and we'll go from there.
Yeah.
Have a great, all of you guys over in the comment section. Thank you, Jessie. Thank you for being patient with me. We're 12 minutes over, and I know you got it run. But thanks for that, and everybody in the comment section, you're awesome. Thank you. We'll be back next week, Jessie and myself. Do you have anything that you want to throw out there really quick before we send them down the road?
Yeah, if you haven't already, come over to Last Second Sports. Tap in over there. I got the 49er side of things. It's a 49er and Lions channel. So I run the 49er side. My co-host Rad runs the Lions side of things. But I promise this week was a little bit weird with the way the Warriors games fell and just kind of the stuff that was going on. I tried to stay away from as much as possible. But normally I go 3-4 times a week over there. Next week, I'll be back at it full time. So if you have not done so, tap in over at Last Second Sports. I appreciate each and every one of you for tuning in tonight for sure. And make sure that you give Jack some love as well and like and subscribe over here.
Yeah, thank you, Jessie. And make sure you're subscribing over there. Jump over there. Jessie does a great job on that channel. Thanks again, everybody. Like, subscribe, set up 49ers Press Democrat on your as a favorite on your browser, your web browser. But subscribe, that's the main thing. Hit that little notification, bell notification, so you know when we go live, you don't miss it. Other than that, have a great night, everybody. We'll be back soon with plenty more content, and I do expect to be at 49ers practice next week for the next OTA period that is available. Take care, everybody.